Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Free Speech Movement Cafe. Thank you for helping us in the library celebrate the 50th anniversary of the free speech movement in a wonderful setting. My name is Dave Dewar. I work for the library, but I'm on the committee that helps put these kinds of programs together and has been doing it for the last 14 years, I believe. This just happens to be a very special time because of this anniversary. And as many of you know, the campus is celebrating this, unlike the way the campus celebrated it in 1964 when I was a freshman. So I would like to thank you all. I would like to thank the poets that are going to read tonight and give us a little reflection on what is important about what the free speech movement was about and what we all learned. And today, those of us who don't look as old as I am could still be learning, we hope, from us. So with that, welcome on behalf of our committee. And I hope you enjoyed this evening. And I'm going to turn it over to Adrian, who's going to handle all of the details. Again, happy 50th anniversary.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I am Adrienne Aaron. I'm a veteran of the FSM, and we have a beautiful evening tonight. But first, we have a couple of announcements. One concerning the rally that is taking place tomorrow at Sproul Hall at noon, in Sproul Plaza, I should say. And Lynn Hollander has the details on that.
Hi, well, mostly it's just please everyone show up at noon tomorrow for the rally. There will be several speakers from the free speech movement, as well as the great activist Dolores Huerta. And we are asking people to please wear yellow or a yellow armband or anything yellow in support of the Hong Kong student movement, which is fighting for democracy right now in Hong Kong. And so we want to show support for them and also show that the FSM means something in terms of what it brought to this campus and the fights and struggles that people need to keep aware of and participate in when appropriate. Here you go.
So where did the program go? Our first poet to read this evening will be Al Young, who is a former poet laureate of the state of California, and who will introduce the program by giving us something of an historical context for our own movement 50 years ago, which didn't invent the wheel. We were the followers, the progeny of many activists who came before us and fighting much injustice that came before us. Al's poem is about Emmett Till. And before Michael Brown, we had Andy Lopez. Before Andy Lopez, we had Trayvon Martin. Before Trayvon Martin, we had Oscar Grant. And in between, we had thousands of young people of color who were persecuted and killed because of who they were. And Al's poem is a tribute to Emmett Till. Thank you, Al.
Good evening. Poetry, as I keep reminding people, is always seditious. It's always an irreducible radical, and it always surfaces in times of novelty and times of crisis. We have been in a crisis for a long, long time. It is the last unmediated medium. That is, there's nothing between you, the poet, and you, the reader or listener. They're trying to figure out a way to get in between and subvert that. But it's our original language. We think of poetry as being largely self-expression. I did this, I saw that, I felt this, I think this, and so forth. It doesn't begin that way. It only became that way a couple of hundred years ago in the wake of the Industrial Revolution. Poetry was a universal language for expressing absolutely everything. That begins at a time when our species did not have microphones, did not have iPads, none of that. Just our five senses and each other. So I will preface the poem that Adrian has asked me to read with a poem. It's the first time I've done this. I'm going to sit. Whose turn in the barrel? You can't see me back there if I sit, right? So I should stand. Whose turn in the barrel? After the Unionists, they picked up and took out photojournalists. Attitude adjustment. I knew this was criminal. I didn't shoot news footage. I kept my eyes and ears wide open. Soon they came after the whistleblowers. Yes, I was signifying, delivering the news slant, but I wasn't blowing no whistles, no covers. I spread the word like leaves. I took note. Then they came after the librarians, seeders, keepers and shelvers of harvested truth. Tree conscious, I kept plenty of books and records, but ran no library. I nail filed it all. Thank you, you got that. Next, they rounded up physicists and chemists, biologists, paleoclimatologists, anthropologists, geneticists, meteorologists, cosmologists, and shrinks. Horrified, I shrank away. I freaked. Then they tased in on the artists, the arts, where close-ups fill in details and show stuff like it is, when image and imagination hook up and take over. I cleared my throat. I groaned. Finally, it was my turn in the barrel. As dumb as they looked, they sneaked up on poetry. They caught up with me. I had no case. Others? They knew, like I know, there's no such animal. We're probably in worse time now than we were, worse shape now than we were 50 years ago when Mario Savio spoke those preserved words. None other than Thomas Jefferson warned us that the price you pay for a democracy, maintaining a democracy, is eternal vigilance. That's the trade-off. And we're at a time now like no other in the history of our species, and it's coming from a lot of different directions, but mainly I think it's our economic system that needs to be examined. Capitalism has to tear up the earth, has to make profits over and over again. Otherwise, they're breaking the law. A corporation has to make profits, or try to anyway. But if that profit-making means destroying our planet, we have to step in and do something about it. One of the problems that we have now, and I was talking about this at Watershed Echo Poetry Festival on Saturday here in Berkeley, that Poetry Flash gives every year. I've noticed that in the 19 years that Watershed, used to be called the Watershed Environmental Conference, takes place, attendance has dwindled, has gone way, way down. And I think one of the reasons for that is language. The terms climate change and global warming ring hollow with so many people now, particularly with the young, because they become sort of bywords of corporate media. And it's hard to picture global warming. It's hard to picture climate change. Something dramatic has to happen before people get what it is. So poetry, and you poets out there, and you writers, you people who use language skillfully and professionally and artistically and mindfully, start thinking of some new terms so that we can get people to understand that this is serious. There's no turning back at this point. The physicist Stephen Hawking gives us a 50-50 chance of surviving the 21st century. The Emmett Till Blues. This one I do have to sit down because I can't see it. The Emmett Till Blues. What they used to do just done it to me. They doing it to all y'all now. Doing it and doing it and doing it to the world. Shoot and cut and smash my head in, take me to the river, sink me down. You call that religion? Yeah, yeah. It hadn't have been for my mother bring my busted body back up to Chicago and let Jet get pictures for the world to look at, nobody would have known. I'm long time gone. Nowadays wouldn't be no way I'd get to say this on television. No way y'all would even see a picture of me. Do y'all know what this is, who this is talking to you? This is Emmett Till. I died and died and died. Soon as y'all figured America was saved, here come Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib. Here come greed and here come grief. The thief of Baghdad, they make their own commandments. Geronimo wouldn't have paid them no mind. What you think they might pull next? Talk to me. I've been done died. I'll rest with that.
Thank you, Al. Our next reader is another veteran from FSM days, a man who was on the faculty at the time, Peter Dale Scott, who has come with a poem about his experience of the FSM.
Well, thanks very much. You know, I've been to a lot of poetry readings, and this is a good crowd for a poetry reading. I'd like just to see how many hands up from those who were actually arrested in December of '64. Well, we have enough. Yeah, it's in honor of them. The poem that I am going to read, I can only read half of it so that other people can get to read too on this program. It would take 15 minutes to read all of it. I'm going to read about half. And if I start waving my hand, that means I'm jumping. The poem is called Greek Theater, and it starts with the scene that you see right behind me here. I was seated about 4 rows in from where it happened, and it changed my life. And in fact, the poem is called Greek Theater, and the subtitle used to be How Mario Savio Changed My Life. Not just by that one event, of course, but that certainly was a crystallizing event. And now the subtitle is How Mario Savio and the Socratic Quest. And the part of the poem, it explains why I believe he is a great philosopher of this last century in the Socratic tradition. That's the part of the poem you're not going to hear. If you want to read it, all you have to do is Google for Peter Dale Scott and Mario Savio. The whole poem is online. In fact, there are 3 versions of it, so make sure you read the version that says Socratic Quest, because that's the latest and final version. And to show you how much I believe in what I'm saying about Mario, I have a prose book coming out that I've worked on for 5 years, coming out in November. It's called The American Deep State, and the climax of the book is this poem, because Mario exemplifies for me what I believe America can do and what America should do and what America must do if it's going to survive into the next century. So, starting with an abbreviated version, there's a lot of quotation in here, but normally I use quotation marks with my fingers, but I think between the microphone and my text, I better just read the text. Okay. Oh, and now one last thing before I start. I had Seth Rosenfeld's book, Subversive, sitting on my desk for 6 weeks, and I was fascinated by the cover and kept looking at the cover. There was a photograph on the cover, and it took me 6 weeks to realize that it was the photograph was the police in the Greek theater jumping on Mario and throwing him to the ground, and that's how the poem begins. It has taken weeks of unsettled half-awareness for me to recognize the student wrestled to the ground by 6 policemen in uniforms, a baton menacing his neck and tie, an arm across his throat to keep him from speaking. On the cover of this book about how J. Edgar Hoover slipped lies to the San Francisco Examiner, advancing the career of Ronald Reagan, is Mario Savio on the stage at the Greek theater, wrecking the well-planned closure of the assembly called to proclaim an end to protests and sit-ins of the free speech movement and the inauguration of, quote, a new era of freedom under law, close quote, by an ambitious professor, hoping thereby to become our next chancellor, who defended the war on national TV and is now less Googled than his daughter, a language poet. That's Leslie Scalapino. The anticlimax, when Mario came back out only to announce there would be a free speech rally on the Sproul Hall steps, upended my own planned life. I was just a few yards away, at the same camera angle, one of those who had urged the students to trust the decency of those in power, my head then filled with Anglo-Latin verse from the 9th century, why the return of a cuckoo in spring spoke to the heart, expressing aspirations of friendship more deeply than Virgil could, and did more to invent Europe at a higher level than the battle stopping the Moors on the banks of the Loire. 2 different kinds of power, the power of dominance versus the power of persuasion. The virtù of Machiavelli, the founder of academic political science, versus the politicae technae of Socrates and Gandhi, which persuades by the force of truth. The cop who battered Howard's Inn versus Mario, inspiring the crowd to immobilize the campus police car till Jack Weinberg inside it was released. The power to transcend enmity, skipping now, in the dramatic struggle between 2 kinds of decency. One struggling for an end to racial hiring in the local supermarkets, one that of the American middle class who did not want their kids dropping acid or cursing America, and so, when given a chance, voted for Ronald Reagan. Well, little could I foresee how Mario, in an instant, who himself had been inspired by the plays of Sophocles and Aeschylus and Euripides before being beaten in Mississippi for walking in public with a black man as part of Freedom's Summer, had changed me from a Latinist into an activist. No longer a mere spectator, as I had been 5 days earlier when the students filed into Sproul Hall singing "We Shall Overcome." That same evening, I spoke at the crisis faculty meeting, and only 1 month later, my first public appeal to get troops out of Vietnam, which, though I could not know it, would soon bring a painful end to my evenings with Czesław Miłosz debating the right English for, this is from his poetry, what is poetry that does not save nations or peoples? A heartbreaking loss at the time, but not one that deterred me as much as the crazy violence that developed after Mario, quote, moved away from leadership, not wanting the movement to become too dependent on him. More skipping. But Mario returned in the 1980s and revived a dormant campus, changing the city's desires with his use of philosophy, Socrates and Thoreau, when he spoke of shifting our values for an America less dominated by production for war and more by human needs, inspiring, yes, even faculty like myself to monitor a divestment protest in support of the South African resistance with white armbands torn from a sheet in our basement, all helping to stoke a nationwide demonstration till finally the UC Regents divested $3 billion in funds so that, I do believe, Mario helped contribute to the liberation of South Africa. It was Mario who remained on the straight path of the Socratic quest to change by persuasion our misguided world, curbing the authority of violence by appealing to those hints of freedom encoded in our DNA. That truth force enabling a movement to overcome, as Mario said, a machine so odious you've got to make it stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. The people who have come in might be able to pass through and find a better spot over there, if you want to do that right now. Next, we have two Julias, two poets named Julia. The first is our Julia Vinograd from Northern California, to be followed by a Julia Stein from Southern California. So Julia Vinograd, please.
I was also part of the free speech movement, though it wasn't anybody important. It was all like this. The Sproul Hall sit-in. I remember telling my legs, you aren't going in that building. No way. Stop walking, legs. You listen to me. My legs didn't listen. They walked into Sproul Hall carrying me with them. I was scared silly, and not just of the cops. Joan Baez was singing, "It was too beautiful, the way the air on a high mountain is too clear." I was scared of the beauty. It was hard to breathe. I remember everything. Girls dressed like secretaries, boys dressed like law clerks, and we expected America to keep the promises it made in 8th grade social studies. Free speech, freedom to assemble. I remember the food when we didn't get arrested at once. Organized people brought cardboard boxes of cardboard bologna sandwiches and oranges. But I also remember a big cauldron of cold spaghetti and even a tin of caviar, and we took a fingernail each till it was gone. I remember classes springing up in every corner. I remember passing the black walnut table in the lobby. The Constitution was probably signed at a table just like it. And a TA was standing on the table giving a lecture about the War of the Roses to his class who were sitting under the table, cross-legged and taking notes. Not kidding, everything in here is exactly true. It looked like a scene from a foreign art film, but the subtitle was the Bill of Rights. About every 45 minutes, someone would hear that the cops were on their way, but people did try to sleep. That was the first time I saw TV cameras. They don't look electrical. They look like high noon on another planet. These are the protesters asleep in Sproul Hall, the reporter said, and they shone those cameras and everyone woke up. It was a long night. It isn't over yet. I got arrested by a young black cop with a big Adam's apple. He was half my weight and looked at me and said, "Please, miss, don't go limp." Nothing went as planned. I hadn't planned to be there. Part of me hasn't left. I remember a light brighter than the TV cameras, stronger than fear. I remember us. Now, I was told I could read a second poem. Was that too loud? No. Each year I do a book and I do all kinds of things, and every once in a while I do a political one, and of the issues on the day. And this is my most recent book. I have got a batch of them. They go for $5. Sorry about the commercial. This is called "What Do I Think of the Government Listening to All Our Phone Calls?" The first thing I thought was, what are they actually hearing? Then I wrote this. I couldn't sleep. I'm looking at the moon and thinking of the touch of your skin, and the government knows I love you. Does this dress make me look fat? The government wants to know. Look, Mr. Tape Recording, I don't want Middle Eastern cereal. The government would put me on a terrorist watch list, and I'd lose my job, and I don't like cereal anyway. Look at the way he treats his mother. You know you promised me, and the government call it treason. I'm going to make you a star. This part is perfect for you. Don't be like that. Even the government thinks you'd be great. I had drinks with the government just the other day. This is a wrong number. I'm right. The number is wrong. Please don't come and take me away. Don't lie to me. You're running around with that little tramp. Roses won't get you out of this one. Me and the government think you really stepped in it this time. Mrs. Wilson, Mommy and the government want to know if Johnny can come out and play. I'm in for the poker game tomorrow if my wife doesn't find out. If the government has a wife, they'll understand. I sing God Bless America in the shower. Old Glory waves from my window. I went all the way up the Statue of Liberty and looked out through her eyes. Don't torture me. Please don't torture me. You beat me up at school in recess, and I told Daddy, and he's telling the government, and they're going to lock you up and throw away the key, and nya, 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 nya. I'm old and sick and very rich, and the government must find out which of my children love me and which just want my money. I don't have much time. The wars can wait. Even the government knows how beautiful you are with your hair falling down. How can they waste time with politics when you're smiling? The president's stone faces on Mount Rushmore are on cell phones, and the government calls it national security. They might be phoning other world leaders. They might be phoning the giant stone heads on Easter Island or the army of Chinese clay soldiers. The government considers a preemptive strike but hasn't decided against what yet. I want to put a mirror on my phone so the government can see itself better than any protest. I won't have to say a word.
Thank you, Julia of the North. Here comes Julia of the South.
Okay, I'll go over there too. I came up to from Los Angeles to Berkeley as a 17-year-old, and I was utterly riveted. The first thing I did was go hear Malcolm X speak. He spoke a couple weeks after I was here, 17-year-old. And I was riveted the whole year with the civil rights sit-ins that were going across Berkeley and San Francisco to get blacks jobs and Mills Drive-In and hotels, etc. But I was 17, and I felt I've been too young to get involved. But the next year I was 18, and it was the free speech movement, and it was on campus, and I felt I could really get involved. Anyway, when I went into the building on December 2nd, I I had been very unhappy with my education, and there was a guy said he was organizing classes for a free university, and would I like to help him? And I said, sure, I'd like to help him, and was modeled after the Freedom Schools in Mississippi. And so what he had me do is I would sit by the table, and TAs would come up and volunteer to teach classes that Julia talked about. And I would tell them where they would teach their classes, and then I would write posters. You know, I've never done any of this. TAs, I'm 18-year-old, and these graduate students were coming up, and I was going to tell them where to go, and I had somebody running around all 4 floors with the posters announcing our classes, etc. Anyway, it was really marvelous. Okay, this poem is by request. It's called Blazing Star. I wrote it in the early 80s, reflecting back on the previous decades. Once I rode the crest of the wave of change that swept the world until the shotguns blasted us. My friends bled on the pavement. The movement we fractured into eyes. The decade died, and I was cocooned in numb despair. I emerged from my cocoon to see the empire we live in crumple another million lives in the colonies, where the torture racks kept turning, the napalm kept falling, the death squads kept shooting, so we in the capital could cruise the cafes in the latest fashions. I saw the sacred rights of my youth sold as status symbols. People bought them, even to putting designer names on their jeans, wanting to pose ass out, wanting to climb up the ladder of success, not speaking to the people in the rung below to teach them their place. What land had I lost myself in? I had forgotten how once I rode the crest of the wave. If some people want to stand still, let them. I want to be moving again, a blazing star across the night. Okay. I published that's for my first book of poetry in 1984, Under the Ladder to Heaven. And a few months before it published, I went to KPFK Radio, and we did 6 events for peace in Central America, including I organized a 6-hour poetry music marathon on live broadcast KPFK radio. We had a 250,000 refugees from Central America in Los Angeles. So we did event after event throughout the decade, and that's some of the background of those poems. Okay, I can read one more, and this is from my latest book. It's called What Were They Like? It's about the Iraq War. I was very interested in what happened to civilians and soldiers. When I was an undergraduate for a short time, I had a roommate from Baghdad. She was a fashion designer. I was wondering what was happening to her and her family, and what was happening to the artists. This poem is called The Woman Disappears Bit by Bit. It's taken from a blog called Baghdad Burning, from someone who called herself Riverbend. Anyway, the woman disappears bit by bit. She disappeared from her Baghdad office after the Americans invaded in March. Her company closed down. She was thrilled to hear her company reopened in June, packed her backpack full of CDs, floppies, notebooks, chewed-on pens. She was the lucky one with the job, a computer programmer, eagerly headed upstairs to her office. Her department director said she couldn't be protected. She was fired. Her brother and cousin rushed her out of the building. She cried all the way home. All over Baghdad, women doctors, lawyers, teachers, disappearing, hearing the same stories, the country full of women disappearing from offices. She disappeared her sunglasses, too dangerous to wear. In her August car trip to visit her aunt, with the sun assaulting her eyes, parts of Baghdad she knew had disappeared. She saw the street with a crater where the missile exploded, the street with the ravaged houses. She began to write her diary on the internet. She disappeared from the streets. Scores of women were kidnapped on the Baghdad streets. Her father, her brother, thought it was too dangerous for her to go out. She had to ask her brother, her cousin, to take her to buy groceries, an excuse to walk down a street, an excuse to breathe. Like Anne Frank, she's imprisoned in a house. Like Anne, she writes a diary. Her blue jeans and pants disappeared. Her hair, her arms, and her legs disappearing, too dangerous to show on the street. Now she wears a hijab, a long skirt, a long-sleeved shirt. Losing her body, her clothes, she still has fingers, has a voice. River Bend sent out her voice, her words, her diary, Baghdad burning out over phone lines to the world. She has stories to tell you. Next door to her cousin's school, men threatened to throw acid at girls who showed hair. Her cousin kept her 14-year-old daughter home. Her neighbor wouldn't let her 19-year-old daughter go to pharmaceutical college. She remembers when once half the students in colleges in Iraq were women before the war. When once Iraqi women were doctors, lawyers, engineers before the war. Fights with electricity not working most of the time. Imprisoned in her house, she devoured the newspapers, the TV news. A woman on fire, she burns to live. She writes her diary. She disappeared from Iraq after her big lone suitcase waited 4 months in her bedroom. In June, she sat by her suitcase crying, unpacked her suitcase. In September, her aunt said her son was threatened and they had to go now. She went from room to room saying goodbye. Okay. Goodbye to her desk. Goodbye to her curtains. Goodbye to her couch. Her uncle and aunt cried when she left. Her uncle tightening the shawl around her head, telling her to keep it on until the border. At the 2 terrifying checkpoints, she prayed under her breath. At the border, their passports were stamped. She cried again, seeing the last Iraqi flags before crossing into Syria as she disappeared from Iraq. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Josh Healey is the recipient of the Mario Savio Young Activist Award and is a spoken word artist and is going to take on the rest of this evening with the poets of the next generation to enlighten all the rest of us oldies. Where are you at, Josh? All right.
I'm not sure how young I am anymore.
He's over 30.
First off, can everybody hear me? Yeah. Use the mic, please. Use the mic for the thing? Okay. I'm pretty loud, so I'll keep it far away from my face. First off, I just want to say thank you to the poets, to Peter and Al and Julia. It's an honor to be up here as a poet and as an activist with you all. Can we please give a round of applause for our poets? And when Lynn, hey Lynn, haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you. When Lynn and Adrian asked me to be part of this, and they said we want to have poets from the free speech movement generation and poets from the younger generation, I I leapt at the opportunity to be part of it, but I also let them know, I said, look, I'm not sure how qualified I am to do the youth part anymore. As I remember, the quote was, don't trust anyone over 30. And I turned 30 months ago. So I don't know, yeah, over 30. So I guess 30 is cool. So I've been not trusting anything the rest of you have said so far, because that's what you taught me to do. So I'm just trying to ignore it. The government, I love it when they listen to my phone and all that stuff, right? Yeah. Exactly. I assume that's what we're recording this for, to just go straight to the NSA and CIA. So I'll speak directly into the microphone. But seriously, I just, it is an honor, and it is, when I look at these words, I see a speech, and these are Savio's words, the famous words from Sprawl. And when I see it, I see speech, but I also see poetry. And when you hear the speech, you hear poetry. And when you listen to a good speaker, when you hear who heard Malcolm, or when you hear, we good in the back? This is call and response. I believe in free speech from everywhere. You can't be from I was at one event a couple years ago, and it was a free speech event, not at Cal, but at another space. And we had like 3 people interrupting us all at once. And we couldn't tell anyone to be quiet because we were at a free speech event. That's just, what are you going to do? So if you interrupt, I'll try and be nice, and we'll get you some food or whatever. For me, as a moderately, still somewhat young writer and activist, it is something one thing that has been lost is the disconnect between generations. And we see posters on a wall, but we don't meet the people who actually made the things happen. And then also, I think what happens a lot, especially in Berkeley, is there's just a lionization and like a glorification of the 60s, and then like nothing happened after. And now they make money off the 60s. And they make $1 billion off of selling the university as youthful rebellion back then. But don't rebel now. There was the anti-apartheid movement in the 80s, and there was a million things every year and every decade. Exactly. And if I open this mic up, which I'm not going to, you would tell me every other issue that has been protested and needs to be protested, and many ways is being protested and spoken on and written about by the poets, by the people who don't have that disconnect between their art, their medium, and the people. And so my message, or I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to see some current Cal students, undergrads, grads, whatever, 7-year freshmen. I've been there, and I'm glad to see you all here, because this is really about understanding that history is not just the faces on the wall, but it's living. And poetry, which is often thought to be the dead art form of old white men that you read about in a book from the early 1800s that you don't understand what they're saying. Poetry is actually the most live form of language that we have, and that institutions try and kill it. And this institution is one of them, and academia and all these things try and kill our language just like they try and kill our movements. And so our job is to bring them back to life and to remember what breath and life there already is. And so I'm really glad to be here with you all, and I'm going to stop talking and introduce a couple young poets who bring words and many other things to life every day. Some of these folks I've known for a while, and some just for a little while. But we're gonna hear about some different issues, but also different language, different styles of poetry, different issues, and that's what this is about. This is about free speech. Are you with me? Yeah. All right, so my generation, and I'm going to claim it now, we believe in call and response. We also don't believe in standing behind tables. We believe in call and response. So if I ask you a question, I'm going to need a response. If you want to hear this next poem coming to the microphone, Berkeley, California, can I get a oh yeah? Oh, yeah. Berkeley, California, can I get a hell yeah? All right, now that's some fucking free speech right there. All right, so this poet coming to the microphone right now, I've known her for a couple years. She comes out of a faraway city called Oakland, California. You may have heard of it. Go A's. I don't know how the game is going tonight, but we'll talk about that later. 7-3 A's? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's a good night for the Bay. And she comes from Oakland. She was part of, and is still part of, a venerable program in the Bay Area called Youth Speaks that does spoken word and, hip-hop education. And she is, I thought she was a student, but she told me she just graduated this past June. So please give it up for Cal alumnus, Jade Cho.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me? Is this on? It's good? No? Yeah. It's good. Is it on? It's good? It's good. Good. Closer to mic. Okay, closer. Yeah. All right. Hi, my name is Jade Cho. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here. So I'm going to share one poem with y'all. Like Josh said, I just graduated from Berkeley. And it's undergrad. One thing that I had, two things I had such a hard time reconciling, as Josh kind of just mentioned, is how the university can celebrate, such an important moment in history, such important work and sacrifice by a lot of people who are here today, and do the same thing that they're doing to Mario Savio in this picture, to students who protest today, do the same kinds of really oppression of student voice and student protest. And the second thing I have such a hard time reconciling is why we celebrate this moment and not the Third World Liberation Front student strikes that came about 5 years after at Berkeley and at San Francisco State. Because there's no folks that look like me in these pictures. So I wanna share a poem. This is written to somebody named Richard Aoki, who some of you may have heard of. He was a strike leader in the Third World Liberation Front at UC Berkeley, involved with the Black Panthers, involved with founding the Asian American Studies department here. And this is a little bit about how the activism of the 60s influenced me. Dear Richard Aoki, I never knew Asians could be badass till I found the flyer with your portrait outside my 12th grade English class. 1968, black and white, 5'6" Japanese man, panther black beret, dark shades, and a mean-ass mug. In Oakland, we grew up starved for hometown heroes. In America, we Asians grew up hungry for heroes who look like us. I filled my appetite for both with your biography. Teenage you, the toughest Oriental of West Oakland, jacking hood ornaments, clocking motherfuckers out. I cited this as historical proof against every bully who ever mistook my quiet for passive Asian. You knew Oakland's black ghetto was little different than the internment camp you were raised in during World War II, helped draft the Black Panthers Party platform, supplied their first firearms, defending West Oakland from corrupt police. Never stopped fighting for third world liberation, even in your old age, cane in one hand, fist in the other, a mentor to flat-nosed brown activists until your death. In August 2012, the FBI released files naming you as an informant. I teared up reading the article, considered tearing your face from my wall. Aged Panthers, Asian radicals called it bullshit. After growing up to countless stories of young men in my city shot in the back by police, I've learned to not trust authorities, but wondered at how breaking your pedestal could make Asian activists quake, that our allegiance to black struggle, our opposition to the system is so flimsy it depends on maintaining one man's myth. I still read your words to cleanse my tongue of apathy. All has been taught to be Asian means passive. History books filled with our corpses buried beneath transcontinental railroads. Chinamen lynched by their queues. Philippines conquered. Hiroshima bombed. Nagasaki bombed. Vietnam bombed. Cambodia bombed. Laos bombed. Casualties of American imperialism. My 11th grade textbook erased the Asian people from the 60s, strung us up into silent model minorities, empty promises that there is equal opportunity in this country if you just work hard enough. But you remind me, We have hands steeped deep in the soil of California farms, deep in the Sangbak-Suk unified farm worker strikes, raised in solidarity. You, with pan-ethnic panthers, Yuri Kochiyama cradling Malcolm X's head in her lap as he exhaled his last breath. Grace Lee Boggs, 96 years old and still growing gardens of resistance between Detroit communities. On the days when I am coward, when I would rather sink into the ease of silence, the yellow brick of middle-class doctor, lawyer dreams, than keep following what I think is my heart, I look to your life to remind me we yellow-brown people are of a history of struggle. These yellow fists have served the people for years, and it is time to finish the battle. Thank you.
So good, even the dog was barking. The cops are coming, but it's cool. We got it. We got, you know, folks making sure they don't come in and bust it up. You know what I'm saying? So don't worry, you don't have to leave. Give it up for Jade Show one more time. Respect. And respect, really, to the Third World Liberation Front and to the faces and to the stories that even as we celebrate resistance, we don't celebrate all resistance. So thank you, Jade, for that reminder. And the next poet I'm going to bring up, a couple years ago here at Cal, down this little path, this square y'all call Sproul Plaza, there was this thing called Occupy. Y'all remember it? Little thing? There was Occupy Cal, and it happened to be, they had the speech the same night as the Savio Awards a couple years ago in 2011. And I got to be there. My friend Ellen Choi got to be there. We're all hanging out. And then it was supposed to be this little event. And then we go outside. There was 10,000 people. That was a lot of people. We were all very excited. And we were a little nervous because we were supposed to speak. And there were 3 of us who were supposed to speak. Me, Ellen, and this guy I'm going to bring up next. And Lynn asked us, who wants to go first? I look at Ellen. Ellen looks at me. We're like, nah, we're good. And this dude, who was 17 at the time, maybe 18 on a good day, was like, I got this, and stepped up in front of the mic of 10,000 people and just ripped it. And, you know, he's been doing that for a while. And also from Oakland. Now he is a junior here at Berkeley. Please give it up for my boy, ChristSna.
Come on, Doc. How's everybody feeling tonight? We feeling good? We feeling community out here? Yeah. All right, shout out to Berkeley, shout out to East Oakland. You know, I got to give my shout outs out. I'm not as articulate as Josh or Jade, but I do have stories, and this is a free speech event, so I want to share with you my story. This, just to preface this poem, it's sort of about my kind of struggle with living in a capitalist society but trying to combat that. It's about my sort of like, I was reading Marx, so I'm in this Social 101 class, and we're doing commodity fetishism right now. And I wrote this poem before I entered the class. And now I realize, oh, this is what this poem is about. Now I can redo this and analyze it and you know, give it to GSI, whatnot. But shout out to SAS, the Southeast Asian Student Coalition, for showing up. Very, very supportive. So I'm a basketball fan, and I really like shoes. But I also hate capitalism. So this is my poem. My Jordans cost $150 US. I got the retros, I got the Chris Pauls, I got the Carmelo Anthonys. My favorite are the 6s with the red lining and the wet tongue. I just like how my shoes look. I like how they shine brand new, how they smell clean, unworn. Every time I'm in Foot Locker, it's like a kid in a candy shop, and I can't help myself. I just want them all. I can't really play like Michael, but at least I could wear what he's wearing. If I close my eyes, I could pretend like I'm Allen Iverson, the little guy who plays basketball like he's dancing, like I'm Duncan, like it's fourth quarter, game 7, and I got the ball in my hands. I got the shoes on my feet. It means I'm raw. It means I'm authentic. It means I'm cool. I'm cultured, right? It means, but wait, it means, my Jordans were made from an empty mother's lullaby, echoing from a village to a sweatshop, from a dream tapering between nothing and a better future, from constant robotic motion that seems to last forever, from organized clutter and confusion in an iron factory that spits out profit and consumes time and flesh and sunrise and sunset. My Jordans came from a landmine that split a callous body in half. They came from the freeway that tore my home in half too. My rubber soles came from the vanishing forest. From flowers sacrificing platters of pollen, to a holy tractor, to a loud whirring chainsaw and a hard hat, to a contract. My laces came strung from a telephone wire in a gunfire intersection. They were knocked down and picked up next to a bullet and a ruby puddle, next to a shell case and a teardrop and a teddy bear, next to a liquor store and an elementary school. These Jordans came from hoop dreams and food stamps, from the promise of evading this city's pointed teeth, from the idea of resurrecting somebody I lost last year. These Jordans came from right there, in the empty refrigerator and that sweepstakes cereal box, in a funeral home and a murder rate climbing a damp crimson ladder. They came from the drive-thru at McDonald's, from the answers at the bottom of the bottle, from a billboard with a lie under a big smile. My Jordans were made in the eye of a hurricane and the blade of a windmill. They washed up after a nuclear power plant meltdown. They appeared in the smoke of a refinery fire. They wielded heels to tongues to carbon fiber and cotton. My logo came from the top floor of a towering skyscraper, from a clean desk and a cluttered soul, from men with blue eyes and deals too good to be true. My Jordans came from a blue ocean that never stops bleeding, from plastic and garbage islands and places that this planet's arms cannot reach. These shoes came from the earth, and I too am just the sand and the dirt in my fingernails. I'm just the stars in the globe, and the carbon in my lungs and the carbon in my shoes can't hold the way this planet spins and unfolds, the way we search for light and gold. So I take my shoes to the park and try to spin like a planet, but I'm off balance. I try to break ankles, but I cross over Cambodia and Vietnam. I forget about the factory smoke, because I'm just trying to heat up, trying to leap with weight on my feet. I can't keep up. See the pain in my streets, and so I carry these sneaks. I can't keep up, because what matters aren't these shoes that I keep. It's all these footprints that I leave. Thank you.
That's my boy. Just so you know, I know him before he got famous. Oakland. Give it up for ChristSna one more time. The footprints that I leave, right? It's about the footprints that I leave. I feel like y'all have left some very nice footprints. We're trying to live up to them. And I think what we're trying to do as poets, as writers, as students, we're all students, whether we got a degree or not. And I still didn't get mine in the mail yet. We're all students, and we're all just carrying on the tradition, right? And remixing it. So with that said, I want to introduce one of my favorite poets in the Bay Area. She is a writer, a theater artist, a performer. She used to do, but I don't know if she's going to bring it back, this amazing show at La Peña on Valentine's Day. Are you going to bring it back? Maybe. We don't know. All right. It was this it was this self-love, marry yourself day. It was the funnest thing ever. She also did these hip-hop theater shows that were off the chain. And she's a professor here at Cal. And she runs this amazing program called June Jordan's Poetry for the People, which is just brilliant and just produces amazing poets and flips the model of education from just students and teachers to teacher students and student teachers. We're all both. I'm going to stop talking about her. I'm going to help welcome her to the stage here, Aya De Leon. Give it up for Aya.
So yes, greetings. Greetings from June Jordan's Poetry for the People, and greetings from the African American Studies Department, and greetings from the American Cultures Program here at Cal. It is an honor to be here in such amazing multi-generational company. June Jordan taught young people that in addition to the right to free speech, we need the tools to tell the stories of our lives and our peoples, and to make the connections between our personal lives and the world around us, to speak the sometimes painful truths about our wounding, our resistance, and our triumphs over oppression. So to that end, and I need to say that I've been the director of June Jordan's Poetry for the People for the last 8 or 9 years, and I've learned so much from her legacy as a leader and a poet. And one of the types of poems that I've learned to write is the emulation poem. And so this is an emulation poem. It's called How Do I Love Thee? A love poem from the Ferguson, Missouri Police Department to black residents. And it is an informal emulation of Elizabeth Barrett Browning's Sonnet 43, which many of you will recognize. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. And I just need to say, to kind of contextualize it, I wrote this piece before the police officer who killed Mike Brown, Darren Wilson, had been identified. So that mystery was still hanging in the air when I wrote this. How do I love thee? And remember, this is the love poem from the police to the residents. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee with the blooming red rose of police bullets to thy firstborn sons. Like a coy and unsigned suitor's note, leaving thee to wonder exactly who sent these flowers. I love thee in the full knighthood of riot gear body armor that exposes only my amorous motives. I love thee with the sharp, cracking kiss of a baton on your tender temple, wrist, shoulder. I love thee with the seductive siren perfume of tear gas. I love thee with the steady, rumbling march of tanks on residential streets. I love thee with the warm, heavy-armed embrace of curfew and martial law. I love thee with the sly lover's denial in public, all the better to heighten my passion in night's clandestine shadows. And when thou would protest against my love with smoke and gas-choked breath, I shall but love thee better after death. And actually, that last line I didn't change at all. That was Elizabeth Barrett Browning's language. So, this next piece is about the misuse of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. This is not a poem, it's an article off of my blog. I have to say, I'm having a little bit of a love affair with social media, especially blogging and Twitter. And I found out about this story on Twitter and then wrote about it on this blog. It's called, When Freedom of Expression Isn't Enough. Pervert associations demand constitutional amendment protecting upskirt photography. Recent court decisions have ruled in favor of the right of men to take, quote unquote, upskirt photos. That is, to accost women in public, stick cameras under their skirts, and photograph their crotches without their consent. The judges based their ruling on the men's First Amendment right to freedom of expression and completely ignored women's right to privacy under their own skirts. What's an outraged feminist writer to do? I could only respond with a parody article. You're welcome. So that is to say, this article is, although not that far from reality, is actually sarcastic. It is satirical, except one particular part, which you will see. Some people are tired of being harassed, and apparently it's not women. Yesterday, several groups advocating upskirt photography have begun a campaign for a constitutional amendment to protect their right to photograph women's crotches without the women's consent. The American Association of Perverts, AAP, and the American Association of Perverts and Predators, AAPP, a spin-off organization whose members left due to ideological differences, have developed a coalition with the Association of Creepy Photographers, ACP, to demand a constitutional amendment that defines a woman's crotch as part of the public domain. Quote, "We're tired of being harassed with these petty court cases that we always win," said a spokesman for the ACP. "The judges always end up ruling in our favor, so the judicial process is just a waste of our time. Time that could be spent accosting women in public and taking photos of their crotches." An AAPP spokesman added, "If women don't want strangers to stick cameras under their skirts and photograph their crotches, they should stay at home, where their fathers, husbands, brothers, uncles, and boyfriends can be in charge of their crotches." The coalition was emboldened by the recent decision by a Texas Court of Appeals. This really happened. According to the Independent UK, the court, quote, ruled 8-1 to strike down part of a law which bans taking images of another person in public without their consent and with the intention to, quote, arouse or gratify the sexual desire of any person, unquote, criticizing the, quote, paternalistic intrusion into people's private right to be aroused. According to the spokesman from the AAP, obviously, upskirt photos are completely in the spirit of the founding fathers of our country. We can read between the lines of what they wrote, an all-male group calling for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Come on, we all know what that means. They were basically like an old-school party frat. Men's right to be aroused and gratified is the cornerstone of this country. At the time, their wives and daughters were their legal property, not to mention any slaves they owned. We don't think of this as an amendment as much as a clarification. The founding fathers would definitely have wanted it this way. The exact language of the amendment reads, quote, "A woman's crotch is hereby declared to be part of the public domain, without restriction to photography, video, and sharing via internet, text, email, in any and all media, whether now known or hereinafter discovered or invented." The Association of Creepy OBGYNs, ACOG, and the Association of Texans for Pre-Abortion Transvaginal Ultrasounds, ATAPADVU, are requesting clarifying language to include internal photography as well. The original coalition of perverts, predators, and creepy photographers is reportedly taking their request under advisement. Yes, people, free speech gone wrong. Okay. So this last piece I want to read was originally written for the 20th anniversary of the American Cultures Program, and it was I debuted this piece here in this room. It's called Baseline, it's called Baseline. I'm a Berkeley girl. I grow up in the flatlands, get Berkeley public educated while this university thumps like a baseline soundtrack to my childhood. A scenic landscape for afternoon strolls to the record stores, a eucalyptus grove to shelter late night high school kisses. Berkeley in the 70s is a charmed time and place. After integration, but before crack. The first U.S. district to voluntarily desegregate schools, but before Prop 13 cuts funding. No fences at Berkeley High's open campus. But charms have limits. Berkeley is part of American culture, just as sure as racial achievement gaps and higher test scores in the hills than the flats. My childhood and adolescence was that breathing space between economic hard times when the hope of the 60s still infected us more than any virus Ronald Reagan would refuse to call by name. I leave for college in '84, come back from the East Coast in '92. The ravages of Reaganomics have molded a harder-edged Berkeley with an exploding homeless population. A cyclone fence around Berkeley High proclaims a closed campus where folks will be kept out, held in, held back, or they just drop out. Meanwhile, Southside campus merchants complain that Oakland teens cause trouble after dark, want them to stay south of the Berkeley border. But as a working young adult, I have no time for strolls to the record store, now CD store. No more kisses that taste of eucalyptus and textbooks. I moved to Oakland, can't hear the bass line from Lake Merritt. Soon, I discover the East Bay poetry scene, from the Ashe Project to La Peña Cultural Center to Poetry for the People to Youth Speaks. The 90s mixes Berkeley's bass line into a hip-hop instrumental track to accompany words from young lips where the community and university sing in harmony. But in 2002, June Jordan passes away. We lose our living link, and the bass plays alone on the hill, acoustic, unamplified. I start teaching here in African American Studies. In 2006, I step into a course that shapes young voices to speak personal histories and explore American cultures through poetry. But young adult poets out in the community and young adult poets on campus spit similar poems while they view each other with traditional town gown suspicion. When I started at Cal, none of the young adults out in the community had ever heard of Poetry for the People, and none of the hardcore Poetry for the People heads on campus had ever been to a poetry event off campus. But what nobody understood is that I'm a Berkeley girl. I know this dichotomy to be false because I'm a Berkeley girl. Old school, hailing from the 70s when the free speech movement was a recent memory and the city and campus looked to each other for inspiration. They didn't understand that I step onto this campus knowing that too many young lyrical geniuses with menial SAT scores who had too many jobs in high school to get that GPA. So I say come. Come to Berkeley to learn and to teach, because June Jordan showed us that anybody can write and anybody can teach, and I become part of this tradition and this team. We have a class of student teachers who go to Cal and Mills and Antioch and Leslie and Berkeley City College, and folks who don't attend any school at all. We teach on campus at Berkeley High and BTech and Realm Alternative Continuation School and community centers, because this culture, this young adult poetry culture, is American culture. Like hip-hop is American culture and activism is American culture, just as sure as African American and Arab American and Native American poetry and history is in our syllabus. And we fill off-campus venues with single moms and SUMA students and high school dropouts and aspiring MCs and Peralta College future UC transferees, because we are all Berkeley. And I know this because I was raised up in this town. I still carry the taste of eucalyptus grove kisses on my lips, and at the age of 47, I rep with mad love for free speech hippies as well as hip hop. And together, we can plug an amplifier up to the bass line to show the whole Bay Area that this is not a closed campus, where Cal students learn that they are part of an arts activism academic tradition. And when they leave this place, they can be part of shaping American culture. I know this because I grew up in a time of hope and strong social movements. I'm a Berkeley girl raised up in this town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you.
Woo! Berkeley girl. Give it up for Aya de Leon one more time. Professor Aya de Leon. Berkeley girl. Oakland, Berkeley. We got it. All right. When I say free, y'all say speech. Free? Free? This is what it's about. It's not dead. It didn't start in '64, as someone said. It's about continuing the tradition, taking it, making it, and remixing it. Y'all down for 2 more poems? Yeah. All right. So I know you want me to use the microphone, sorry. who's recording it?
FSM.
Lynn, do I have to?
Yes.
All right. If Lynn says I have to, I'll do it. All right. All right. And everyone else too. This piece, we started with a piece about Emmett Till. This is a piece that is about Trayvon Martin, but also about not just the brutality, but also the resistance. Last year, after the verdict, when George Zimmerman got off, and there were protests a lot of places, in Florida, in Tallahassee, there was a group of young people, 18, 19, 20, 16, 15, not just college kids, called the Dream Defenders, that went and occupied the state capitol of Florida. From all over Florida, they came and occupied the state capitol for 30 days. Ended up making national news demanding something called Trayvon's Law. And they were called the Dream Defenders. They won some things, they didn't win everything. They're still organizing, they're now part of a national movement. A lot of them have been in Ferguson, teaching the young folks in Ferguson how to organize and mobilize. At the same time, across the country, in Arizona and in California, at the border with Mexico, there was another group of young people called the Dreamers. A group of immigrants and immigrant activists who had been deported. And there was a group of 9 of them called the Dream 9 that said, we're coming back across the border and we dare you to try and stop us. And they came and publicly crossed the border. They were detained, but after a month of organizing, mobilizing, and a lot of stuff here in the Bay, including here at Berkeley, organizing support, they won their freedom, got out, and reunited with their families across the U.S. The Dream Defenders in Florida, the Dream 9 in Arizona, all dreaming together. And that's what poets and activists do, is we dream and then try and turn those dreams into reality. So this is a poem. We've been remixing things. This is a remix of Langston Hughes' A Dream Deferred. It's called A Dream Detained. What happens to a dream detained? Does it wilt like a rose in the Arizona sun? Does it sink into the Pacific, water filling its lungs? Or does it fight to come home, cross borders, and spread hope until it has won? This is not a weak dream, a beach margarita dream, a suburban house and 2-car garage dream, but this is an American dream. And call it Aztlan, call it the hood, call it the south side of anywhere, we call it home. So bring them home. Bring our young people back to us, safe and alive, with a bag of Skittles and a smile. Because I have a dream that one day Martin Luther King will not be misquoted by Bill O'Reilly on national TV, spitting fake colorblind fallacies, affirming all the wrong actions. Tell me, what is so conservative about robbing a young black boy of his life as he's walking home to see his father? Where are the family values in deporting the only mother a teenage girl has ever known? Her name is Mia. She loves to skate and write and come to my workshops. But there's only one poem she wants to write these days, and she is gone. Her mother, shipped to Tijuana like unwanted merchandise. America, when did you stop dreaming? Where are your open arms that reached for the stars and imagined? You sing John Lennon's lyrics, then shoot him in Central Park. Blame it on a black man in a hoodie and go on with your day. America, whose ground are you standing on? This dream is black, and black is beautiful, so this dream is fucking gorgeous and young and brown and white too if you're down to get dirty. And listen first and never bring tofu to the meeting ever again. Like for real. Maybe one time. Because this is a feast for the dreamers and the defenders. Enchiladas and shrimp gumbo, soul food and pico de gallo. This is the same America. This is the new America, same as the old America. Can you taste it in Arizona? You can't eat fake-ass Taco Bell forever if no one is there to serve your chalupa. How will your picket fences stay so white if no one is there to paint them? And Sheriff Arpaio, mi amigo, who is going to take care of you in your nursing home next year? Yeah. You better learn some Spanglish if you want something more than Jell-O for desayuno. And that is why we are here. Because true education always starts with the students. Bold youth with old souls who know their history enough to repeat it, remix it into something fresh and free and fresh and free and fresh. And what happens to a nightmare ignored? Does it hide and shrink from the sun? Does it race to pick up the gun? Does it sit back and watch the throne? Or does it sit in and make itself known? Take over the palace, shout loud and strong and beautiful, a butterfly shedding its cocoon so soon. How does a nightmare become a dream? Lay your head down, America. Get nice and comfortable. Close your eyes real tight and show us all what you see. Thank you. One more? Yes. All right. This is the poem that I have gotten the most trouble for in my life. And I figured that if we're at a free speech event, this is the one to do. All right. I'm Jewish. Nobody know y'all don't care. It's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. I just want to say, Shana Tova. Thank you, Aya. I just want to say to any Jewish students out there, Yom Kippur is on Saturday, which sucks because we don't even get a free day off of school for it, which is the only real point of a Jewish holiday.
And students don't get to sleep in the morning. When I had two Jewish professors back in 1976.
Exactly.
So I could take the morning off.
Exactly. And there's a dog walking across right now. Let's do it, Berkeley. So I'm Jewish, and there's a country in the Middle East that sometimes I disagree with. And sometimes when I disagree with it, people don't like that. And they say I hate myself. Now, I do a lot of things, but I don't really hate myself. Maybe I should try something else, but I don't do that. So this is a poem that I want to share with you all in the name of free speech. And thank you all so much. Thank you all. Thank you all. And I would love just, after we go, I would love all the poets, I would love to just get a photo all together, if that's okay. I just want to put that out there. All right, so this is for you all. So I'm in D.C., on my way to march against Israeli occupation. I get off the red line at Judiciary Square, and the first thing I see are these two middle-aged women wearing matching black tank tops with pink letters across their chests that read, "Two moms are hotter than one." Apparently, the Palestinian Solidarity March has been placed right across the street from the Gay Pride Parade. Real talk. It's clear as the Dead Sea who is going to which. Peace signs and keffiyehs to my right, leather boots and nipple tassels to my left. 4 lanes divide the crowds, but have no power to stop the two sound systems from becoming one explosion of human noise. So on my right it's free, free Palestine, and on my left it's gay liberation now, and free, free Palestine, and gay liberation now, and then free Palestine now, and gay liberation Palestine, and free gay Palestine, free gay Palestine, free gay Palestine. Berkeley, are you with me? Yeah. No? Okay. And I'm here, and so I imagine Mahmoud Abbas, Prime Minister turned minister, performing the first marriage in liberated Ramallah and pronouncing the two new citizens happy husband and husband, while Ellen DeGeneres and the Human Rights Campaign stage a hunger strike outside the UN to demand the LGBT right of return. And I wonder if we can build a queer intifada, what else in this world is possible? And I am here, straight and Jewish, white and American. Solidarity is not just my offering at the movement dinner table, it's the first invitation I got to sit down and eat. But I remember the day at Ellis Island when I was hungry myself. And I remember the same day German soldiers put yellow stars on my family's coats, they put pink ones on my friends. My friends, Anne Frank is Matthew Shepard. Guantanamo is Auschwitz. Gay liberation is Palestine, and we are all still walking on occupied land. The marchers are shouting their final chants now. I start to make my way back to the metro, see a young woman walking on the other side of the street. She is wearing hijab, body covered from the knees up except her face and hands, toned like olive trees. And her left palm waves a small but unmistakable rainbow flag. It is June in DC. The moon is rising early in the evening sky. Not a crescent, not a rainbow. The moon is full tonight, full and bright and marching ever higher. Thank you guys. Thank you all very much, and I would just like to invite back up, and if we could have one round of applause for all the poets who are on the stage tonight. Can I invite you guys back up? Can I invite you guys back up? Thank you. Do we have everyone? Yeah. There we go. Always late to the party. So, one more round of applause for all the poets, please. We can take our own selfies later. I'm sure someone's. We'll get one. We'll get one. Thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you all. Thank you all. It's been an honor. I know there's lots of other free speech events, but more importantly are the free speech events that aren't publicized by the university. So I look forward to seeing you at all of those. Open mic is outside after the event if you want to do an open mic. And thank you guys so much. Have a good night. Yeah.